Hi there, my name is Scott McDonald, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to do the air step arm freeze. The air step arm freeze was invented by B-Boy Dizzy from the Supernaturals crew around the late 90s. Sometime between then and now, people started calling it all sorts of different names. I'm going to stick with the original name. I'm going to be teaching you how to actually hold and balance the shape. In a B-Boy battle, you're just going to pop into it, show the shape, and pop back out, and it's totally cool. But I still recommend you learn the proper alignment to save yourself from potential injury. The air step arm freeze isn't an air chair or an air baby, but it does share traits of both. The angle of your torso and the placement of your stab are both very similar to an air chair, but the way that you balance with your free arm and leg and the overall appearance of the trick are very reminiscent of an air baby. With that in mind, the more comfortable you are with an air baby and an air chair, the easier it's going to be to learn the air step arm freeze. At the bare minimum, you should at least be able to balance a one-handed turtle freeze or a croc pretty much in your sleep. Besides those, the only other prerequisite is having a flexible and strong leg. As you fall out of it when you're learning, the tendency is to kind of fall sideways and torque your knee. So if you've had knee problems, just be careful with it. As with all other freezes and hand balancing tricks, this is way easier to do on solid ground like concrete or hardwood. The last place in the world you want to learn this is a gymnastics floor. It's going to give underneath you every time you try and balance, and you might end up injuring a wrist. Just like when you learn an air baby, the air step arm freeze is going to involve a little bit of pinching and abrading your skin just above your elbow. It can be pretty painful at first, but that feeling is going to subside with time and training volume. If you want to both save yourself from extra pain and learn faster, I recommend not wearing shoes when you learn. Shoes, no matter how flimsy or light, are going to abrade your arm way harder than your foot would, and also it makes it really difficult to feel the connection between your toes and your tricep through the sole of a shoe. When I was first learning, I tried to avoid this pain by wearing elbow pads and long sleeve shirts, but in the long run that actually just made it harder to feel the correct balance, and I recommend you just grin and bear it. That said, I do recommend wearing a knee pad because you're going to slam your knee into the ground quite a few times as you find your balance. Alright, all warnings and disclaimers aside, let's learn the air step arm freeze. To get into the air step arm freeze, first you're going to start in a lunge. If you're doing it on your right hand, then it's going to be a left foot lunge. Lean all your weight into your left foot so that you can bend your right knee maximally without pressure. Switch your grip so that your left hand is holding your right ankle, flex your foot, and then place your toes directly above your elbow at the base of your tricep. You also want to feel your heel press against your lower back in roughly the same spot as an air chair stab. It'll probably slide down to the top of your glute as you get into position, and that's totally fine. At the same time, place your right hand on the floor close to your right knee and make sure that your fingers are spread wide and pointing perpendicular to the line of your body. You want to maximize surface area and actively grip the floor to keep the weight in your fingertips. Now, engage your right lat and simultaneously reach as far overhead as possible with your left arm. This is to pull the weight off of your left foot and allow it to come off the floor. You don't want to think about lifting your left foot, you just want it to become weightless and allow it to just barely float off the ground. Once your foot is off the ground, honestly, just try and pretend it's not there. Any kind of movement with it is going to shift your balance and potentially tip you in any direction, so the more you can just trick yourself into ignoring your foot, the better. Now that you understand the general positioning, here are a few drills that will help you increase your strength, control, and balance. The first drill is just to get into the air step arm freeze, but leave your left foot on the ground as an anchor. You don't want to have any weight in it, you just want to use it to make the balance easier. This is really similar to when you're learning a one-arm handstand and you use your fingertips of your free hand for balance. If you can hold that position for 30 seconds or so, try graduating to holding on to a solid object that you can pull on, and this will allow you to lift your foot off the ground and experiment with different leg positions and find what works and doesn't work to balance and not rotate. Once that becomes easy, instead of gripping the object, try just resting your hand on top of it. This will make it a little more challenging. Once you've done that, you can try gripping a light object like a full water bottle or a yoga wheel and use that as a counterbalance. This is only slightly easier than the real thing, and it's a really good way to build more strength. I also recommend you experiment with this more compact version of the freeze. When I was learning, it was easier to balance just because everything is in a little bit tighter and you aren't punished as much for making any movement with the free leg. As you probably noticed by now, there's quite a lot going on in the air step arm freeze. It took me weeks of trying before it felt even vaguely possible, and it took me even more weeks before I could reliably get into position. There are a lot of things that can potentially go wrong, but all of these mistakes fall into three main categories: alignment, movement, and engagement. A common alignment issue is the foot placement on the arm. You don't want it to be too high or too low. The sweet spot is right there. It's a little bit further inside than an air baby, but not so far so that you feel like you're crushing your bicep. Right there. If your knee is going out to the side, it's going to be kind of tricky to balance. Your knee is going to be inherently a little bit out to the side, but you don't want it to be horizontal or perpendicular to your body. Use your glute to make sure that you control where that knee is going. This trick won't work if you close your hips, and you also don't want to open them so much that you feel like you're in a bridge. I find that relying on the same visual reference points that I use for an air baby also makes this easier to control. If you're looking around, your head is pretty heavy and it's going to tip your weight in different ways. And just like when you're trying to balance on one foot, it's much easier to balance when you're looking at a stationary object than when you're seeing motion. If you feel like you're always tipping towards a headstand, you might not be engaging your lat enough to keep your chest up. On the other hand, if you feel like you can't tip towards a headstand, then maybe you're having too much weight in your base foot and you could try experimenting with a counterbalance. Wherever your free hand goes, your weight is going to follow. As you can see here, if you put it behind yourself or next to yourself, you're going to fall in those directions. A nice way of assessing whether or not your arm is in the right position is whether you can see it or not. If you think your arm is overhead but it's here, it's not overhead. Here, can't see your arm. This is what you want to feel. Alright, movement issues can be solved up pretty easily. The less movement, the better. Make sure everything is as slow, subtle, and controlled as possible. Any dynamic or fast movement is going to be really hard to balance. This is a really precariously stacked freeze to begin with, so moving in it, not easy. Try to resist the urge to jump into this freeze until you can control it. Any movement of the free leg too high, too fast, or even to the sides and out of alignment with your body is going to cause you to tip over. Rotation is usually caused by having one or more body parts at the wrong angle or forgetting to engage them. I recommend filming yourself from different angles so you can find the potential issues. If you forget to engage your lat, you're going to fall over. If you forget to grip the floor, your balance is only going to last as long as a perfect alignment. If you aren't engaging your glute, your knee is going to tend to go out to the side, which is going to pull your weight in a weird direction. If the foot that's stacked on your arm relaxes, you're risking twisting your ankle or splitting your toes around your elbow, which is an incredibly unpleasant feeling. Don't do it. The best advice I can give for the air step arm freeze is just to be patient. It's a really complicated trick, and until each facet of the technique is ingrained in your muscle memory, it's going to be a challenge. Don't expect to nail it in one session, or in 1 week, or even in 1 month. And try not to train to the point of self-destruction. You'll progress much faster if you just do a handful of air step arm freezes every time you train, rather than doing like 100 in one session. That's going to leave you with a bruised tricep and keep you from training the next day. Also, if you keep pushing far beyond the point of fatigue, you really increase the risk of injuring yourself. Train smart, accept that it'll take a little while, and you'll get there. As always, please like, share, and subscribe, and if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. If you have requests for future tutorials, let me know, and I'd be happy to oblige. Thank you B-Boy Dizzy for creating this cool trick, and I look forward to seeing all the future generations put their own spin on it. Happy training!